In a continent hungry for true leadership, one man's courage shook the foundations of power, while another's silence spoke volumes. Who really leads Africa today? Dive into the story of Traoré's bold defiance versus the Nigerian president's silence, and discover how Africa's youth are rewriting the future. The sun had just risen over Ouagadougou when President Ibrahim Traoré stepped out of the military compound. The city was tense, but hopeful. His people had gathered again, this time not to protest, but to support. Since taking power, Traoré had done what few dared. Speak the truth about foreign interference, challenge the status quo, and call out African leaders who kept quiet while their countries suffered. That morning, he wasn't just addressing Burkinabe citizens. He was sending a message across the entire continent, especially southward towards Abuja. In Nigeria, the mood was different. The media was quiet, filtered. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, once known for his boldness, now seemed wrapped in layers of diplomacy and silence. As the world reacted to France's panicked exit from Burkina Faso and Mali, and as ECOWAS stumbled under foreign pressure, Tinubu said little. Too little. At the heart of Africa's awakening, two figures emerged. One who roared, and one who whispered. That week, Traoré shocked the world. On live television, flanked by youth leaders and village chiefs, he revealed a network of French intelligence operatives still active in Sahel countries despite their official withdrawals. Documents, audio clips, photos. He named names, some African leaders included. The crowd exploded with anger and admiration. Across social media, hashtags trended. Hashtag Traoré speaks. Hashtag Africa wakes. Hashtag Tinubu where are you? Back in Abuja, Tinubu held a private meeting with key cabinet members. We must be cautious, his advisor whispered. If we speak against the West, we lose critical support. But young Nigerians weren't waiting anymore. Inspired by Traoré's fearlessness, they began organizing town hall meetings, demanding answers. TikTok and Instagram were flooded with side-by-side comparisons. Traoré on a dirt road with farmers. Tinubu in a luxury SUV convoy. Traoré denouncing neocolonialism. Tinubu shaking hands with French diplomats. The contrast was glaring. And in the streets of Lagos, chants started to rise. Lead or leave. One Traoré. 100 million voices. The tension was building, and West Africa stood at a crossroad. While the streets of Lagos echoed with chants, something unexpected was happening inside Aso Rock. A young female aide, barely 27, slid a confidential report across Tinubu's table. Sir, the youth are mobilizing, not just in Nigeria, Senegal, Ghana, and even Cameroon. They're looking to Ouagadougou for direction. Tinubu looked up, his face unreadable. Because of that boy in fatigues? He muttered. Yes, sir. That boy is now being called the new Sankara. In Burkina Faso, Traoré was already moving on. His next target, corporate land grabs. Multinational corporations had been buying up vast farmlands in West Africa, displacing entire communities. Traoré summoned village elders and youth leaders to the capital. On live broadcast, he declared, "No foreign hand will own what feeds our people. We reclaim our soil. We reclaim our future." Farmers wept. Young men and women applauded. Even opposition leaders stayed quiet. Meanwhile, Tinubu received an urgent call from Paris. Bola, we need your support on the ECOWAS intervention. Traoré's influence is spreading. We must contain it. Tinubu hesitated. The West had always offered loans, training, intelligence. But now, with Traoré's popularity spilling into Nigeria, any move could backfire. Then something happened no one expected. A letter leaked. An internal ECOWAS memo, signed by Nigeria's delegation, proposing military sanctions on Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger for destabilizing the regional order. Traoré reacted instantly. He stood before a massive crowd at Place de la Révolution in Ouagadougou, holding up the leaked paper. They fear a free Africa, he thundered. They fear your voice. But we will not be silent. The crowd roared. Behind him, flags of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger flew together, united, defiant. No French, no ECOWAS, no fear. In Nigeria, things took a sharper turn. University students protested across campuses. No to ECOWAS war. We need leaders, not followers. Posters of Traoré began appearing in dorm rooms, markets, and buses. It was no longer about Burkina Faso. It was about what leadership looked like in Africa. And in the shadows, a small group of retired Nigerian soldiers released a video. We fought in Liberia. We fought in Sierra Leone. But we won't fight our African brothers for Western gain. If they send us to Ouagadougou, we will join Traoré. The pressure on Tinubu intensified. International media began asking, is Nigeria still Africa's giant? Or has Burkina Faso taken the mantle? Tinubu's silence had become deafening. And across Africa, the question was being asked louder than ever. Who truly leads this continent? The presidential villa in Abuja had never felt so tense. President Tinubu sat in his office, surrounded by generals, ministers, and foreign diplomats. His silence was no longer strategy, it was weakness. And the young population, fueled by Traoré's defiance, smelled it. Mr. President, said his defense chief cautiously, the military is growing uneasy. Many of our boys relate more with Traoré than with our position. If we're not careful, we may lose their loyalty. Tinubu narrowed his eyes. Then we must remind them who's in charge. But he didn't sound convinced. Even his own voice betrayed uncertainty. Across West Africa, the energy was shifting. In Dakar, students lit candles for African unity and held up posters that read, not ECOWAS, not France, not NATO, only Africa. In Accra, a Ghanaian MP quoted Traoré on the floor of parliament, causing chaos in the chamber. If Burkina Faso can reclaim its dignity, why can't we? And in northern Nigeria, civil society groups, traditionally quiet, organized peace rallies and circulated one demand: open dialogue with the Sahel, not war. Traoré saw it all. But instead of celebrating, he called for caution. He held a closed-door meeting with his war council. They will try to provoke us, he warned. But we must not fire the first bullet. Let the people rise. Let truth be our weapon. Still, he wasn't blind. The threats were real. France was quietly rerouting support to neighboring countries. Foreign drones were spotted in northern Burkina Faso. Mercenaries from Chad and Senegal had been seen near the border. The stage was being set for a proxy war. And then came the ultimatum. ECOWAS, backed by certain Western powers, issued a final warning. Comply with regional protocols or face economic and military consequences. Traoré responded in a way no one expected. He summoned every local chief, every youth leader, every women's association, and made one announcement. We are leaving ECOWAS. Gasps filled the room. Our dignity is not for sale. If we must start again from the soil and the sweat of our people, then so be it. In Abuja, Tinubu's cabinet erupted in panic. He's breaking the whole system, shouted the finance minister. If this spreads, ECOWAS is finished. Our economy can't handle a mass withdrawal. But Tinubu said nothing. He looked out the window toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond that line was a young captain with no fear of sanctions, no love for luxury, no loyalty to foreign masters. And he was now the most admired leader in Africa. The streets of Nigeria grew louder. Students, farmers, market women, ex-military officers, everyone seemed to echo the same thing. Traoré is not our president, but he speaks like one. The people weren't just watching a revolution. They were becoming it. And in the silence of power, President Tinubu realized something chilling. Sometimes, doing nothing is the loudest mistake a leader can make. In a village near Kano, Nigeria, a group of elders sat beneath a neem tree, radios crackling with the latest broadcast from Burkina Faso. Young boys gathered at their feet, silent. Even the goats seemed to listen. And President Traoré says Burkina Faso will adopt a new Pan-African currency, backed not by Western reserves, but by gold and local production. An old man raised his eyes to the sky. We're watching the beginning of something. Something we haven't seen since Nkrumah or Sankara. In Ouagadougou, the atmosphere was electric. Thousands of citizens wore military fatigues in solidarity with Traoré's vision. Buses and bikes were repainted in Pan-African colors. Schools taught students new morning pledges, not to a foreign flag, but to the soil beneath their feet. A week after announcing Burkina Faso's withdrawal from ECOWAS, Mali and Niger joined him. The trio announced the creation of AES, the Alliance of Sahel States. Their manifesto was simple. 1. No foreign military bases. 2. No CFA franc. 3. No exploitation without negotiation. 4. No puppet leaders. Back in Nigeria, the ripple became a wave. Musicians dropped songs praising Traoré. Pastors and imams began referencing him in sermons. Be bold like Traoré. Speak like Traoré. Market women in Enugu renamed their stalls Traoré's tomatoes, Burkina beans. TikTokers mocked Tinubu's silence with viral skits. One featured a puppet version of Tinubu nodding at everything a Western ambassador said. And then came the boldest move yet. A coalition of Nigerian youth groups, united under the banner Niger Rebirth, called for a national youth dialogue. Location: Abuja. Date: Independence Day. Theme: Africa must choose herself. They invited everyone, from civil society to students, artists to activists. They also sent an open invitation to Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Within hours, the invite went viral. The Nigerian government tried to downplay it. "This is not official," said the Minister of Information. "We advise young people to stay focused on their studies." But the people had tuned them out. Even some federal lawmakers broke ranks, calling for reforms and threatening to resign unless Tinubu opened a national conversation. Then came the moment no one expected. Traoré responded. He appeared in a short video, standing beside a simple African map made of wood. "To the youth of Nigeria," he said, "I hear you. I see your fire. I am humbled by your invitation. Though I cannot cross into your land right now, know this: Burkina Faso stands with you. Africa belongs to the brave." That message shattered the silence. In northern Nigeria, villages organized marches. In the south, university campuses held poetry slams dedicated to the captain of courage. In the east, retired generals met quietly and sent warnings to the presidency. Let the people speak. Don't silence them this time. In Aso Rock, Tinubu sat in a dim room, watching the movement grow beyond his grasp. He whispered to no one in particular, "If I speak now, will they even listen?" Because now it was no longer about who had the power. It was about who had the people. And right now, Traoré didn't rule Nigeria, but he led its heart. October 1st, Independence Day in Nigeria. But this year, the fireworks weren't for the government. They were for something else, the largest youth-led gathering in West African history. Over 500,000 people gathered in Abuja's Eagle Square, and millions more tuned in online from every corner of Africa. Flags waved, not just Nigeria's, but makeshift Pan-African banners: red, green, gold, black. The Nigerian government tried to stop the broadcast, but it was too late. Young people had built their own live stream systems using mobile networks and foreign servers. The state had the police, but the youth had the pulse of the continent. The speakers began. Fatima Usman, a 22-year-old law student, took the mic. "We were told to stay silent. We were told to wait our turn. But tell me, how long do you wait when your leaders can't even whisper the truth?" Traoré is younger than most of us here, but he leads like a lion. Our president, like a shadow behind a curtain. The crowd erupted. She raised her fist. "We don't want war. We want truth. We don't want chaos. We want courage. And if you can't give it to us, step aside and let us build the Africa we dream of." In Ouagadougou, Traoré watched on a projector screen with his advisors. A slight smile appeared on his face. He whispered, "The fire is no longer mine. It's theirs now." Back in Abuja, more speakers came forward. An ex-soldier, a market woman, a teenage tech genius from Ibadan. Each of them told the same story. Africa is waking up. Not by bullets, but by bravery. Not with coups, but with conviction. Suddenly, the crowd started chanting, "Africa first! Traoré! Traoré! Tinubu! Speak or step!" The noise reached beyond the square. Policemen on the perimeter removed their helmets. Some clapped, others nodded. Then, the unexpected happened. A helicopter appeared overhead. The crowd tensed. But instead of a government chopper, it was a private drone delivering a banner, huge and bold. "Africa has chosen her voice. Her time is now." At the presidential villa, Tinubu sat surrounded by silence. His aides stared at the screens, helpless. His security chief asked, "Sir, should we respond?" Tinubu finally stood, his voice low but trembling. "I was given the crown, but maybe I never earned the throne." He walked away, slowly, toward the back room. No press, no speech, no courage. Meanwhile, across Africa, a new term spread like wildfire. The Traoré effect. Not a coup, not a speech, a spark. A spark that turned silence into a roar. And now, even in countries where no one had dared to question authority, young people were rising. With words, with unity, with unstoppable hope. Africa was no longer waiting to be led. Africa was leading itself. It didn't take long. As the youth-led Independence Day uprising in Nigeria made headlines across the globe, Western leaders called emergency meetings. In Paris, Washington, London, and Brussels, the conversation was the same. Traoré is no longer just a Burkinabe figure. He's a continental force. But what disturbed them most wasn't Traoré's speeches. It was his silence afterward. He didn't gloat. He didn't interfere. He simply kept building. New alliances, new roads, new local industries. He showed results, not just rhetoric. Meanwhile, in Addis Ababa, the African Union headquarters became a battleground. Two factions emerged. The old guard leaders from aging regimes, calling for unity through stability, defending ECOWAS, and accusing Traoré of spreading unrest. The new bloc, younger representatives from Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and a growing list of quietly inspired nations like Sierra Leone, Liberia, and even parts of Sudan and Congo. The AU chair, caught in the middle, called for a special summit. Agenda: redefining leadership in Africa's new era. Inside the summit chamber, emotions ran high. An older statesman from Central Africa banged his fist. "This Traoré is a soldier, not a statesman. He's dividing the continent." But then a soft voice rose behind the mic. It was Mariam Diarra, a young female delegate from Senegal. "No, honorable sir," she said calmly. "Traoré is not dividing Africa. He's revealing it. He's a mirror, and many don't like what they see." Stunned silence. Across Africa, citizens watched the summit live on satellite TV and smartphones. The streets of Accra, Nairobi, Banjul, Harare, and Kigali buzzed with debate. Children asked their parents, "Who will speak for us?" And the answer began to echo, "We will." In Nigeria, Tinubu faced another dilemma. A new youth-led political movement had announced its plan to register officially as a party. The African Renaissance Party, ARP. Their slogan? Speak, stand, serve. They weren't waiting for 2027. They were organizing now, ward by ward, zone by zone. And they weren't just focused on Tinubu. They were focused on system change. Then came the unexpected voice. A former Nigerian military general, known for silence and neutrality, released a video statement. "I served this country for 35 years. I fought wars, but I never imagined the real war would be about truth and courage. Traoré is not perfect, but he is real. And our silence, my silence, has cost us everything." The video hit 50 million views in 2 days. Traoré's next move? He quietly flew to Niamey, then to Bamako, meeting his Sahel allies. No media fanfare, no live broadcasts, only strategy. There, behind closed doors, they finalized the Sahel Charter. Mutual defense against foreign aggression. Shared resources for agriculture and infrastructure. A Pan-African trade route bypassing colonial ports. A new digital communication network, owned by Africans, hosted in Africa. The world watched anxious. Then France made its move. It announced sanctions on Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Visa restrictions, frozen assets, trade barriers. But Traoré stood before his people that night with one sentence that shook the continent. If it costs us comfort to gain dignity, then we've made the best deal of our lives. In Nigeria, a young boy, no older than 10, stood with his father watching the broadcast. He tugged at his father's shirt and asked, "Papa, is he our president too?" His father knelt and smiled. "No, son, but maybe he taught ours how to become one." While France tightened sanctions and Western headlines branded Traoré as a dangerous populist, a different story was spreading underground, through WhatsApp groups, encrypted messages, underground radio stations, and diaspora forums from Chicago to Johannesburg. A new phrase had caught fire. This time, Africa won't blink. In Washington, the State Department was rattled. Internal cables described the Sahel uprising as the most culturally potent shift in African politics since the anti-apartheid movement. In Beijing, China took a different route. They invited a joint delegation from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger under the radar, offering infrastructure investment in exchange for raw material trade. No political strings attached. But Traoré refused to sign anything on the spot. He told the Chinese officials, "We don't want new hands on our soil. We want partners, not owners." The message spread fast. Traoré was not for sale. Meanwhile, in the African diaspora, the energy was volcanic. In Atlanta, African-American leaders and Pan-Africanists hosted a conference. "Africa is speaking. Are we listening?" In London, Black youth groups marched in front of the Nigerian embassy holding signs. "We want leaders, not managers." From Lagos to Wagga, our voice, our future. In Paris, despite riot police, thousands of African-born migrants rallied in the streets waving flags of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. One chant echoed louder than the rest. "Down with the old deals. Africa chooses herself." And then came the turning point. A group of Caribbean nations, led by St. Vincent and the Grenadines, invited Traoré to speak virtually at the Pan-African Unity Summit. Live from Ouagadougou, Traoré delivered a short but powerful speech. "Brothers and sisters, whether we are in Accra, Kingston, or Atlanta, Africa is not a landmass, it's a spirit. They colonized our resources, then our minds. But now we are reclaiming both. Not with hate, not with war, but with purpose. To the youth, don't wait for a savior. Be the voice that breaks the chain." The video broke the internet. In under 48 hours, it was subtitled into 21 languages and reshared by celebrities, scholars, and revolutionaries. Back in Nigeria, Tinubu faced the greatest storm of his presidency. 2 of his ministers resigned, citing irreconcilable differences with current national direction. The National Assembly began debating the unthinkable, a vote of no confidence. Young activists launched the Traoré Challenge online, a social media trend where users posted clips of themselves boldly stating one truth their leaders refused to say. Even Nollywood stars joined, posting raw, teary-eyed monologues about poverty, broken promises, and the dream of a free Africa. Then came the ultimate test. ECOWAS announced a joint military drill, with external support, to maintain regional stability. But soldiers in Nigeria, Ghana, and Ivory Coast began refusing orders. One unit in Kaduna recorded a message. "We are not mercenaries for foreign interests. We will not raise our guns against fellow Africans fighting for dignity." The video spread like wildfire. Traoré again said nothing inflammatory. Instead, he simply posted a photo, standing beside schoolchildren building bricks for a local construction project. No words, just a caption. "Rebuilding begins with belief." And that simple photo got more engagement than any ECOWAS announcement in months. Now the lines were drawn. But this was not a war of tanks and drones. It was a war of spirit versus silence. Truth versus timidity. Africa wasn't waiting for permission anymore. And the world, for the first time in a long time, wasn't asking, "What's wrong with Africa?" It was asking, "What if Africa finally gets it right?" The African Union summit convened in Addis Ababa amid unprecedented tension. Delegates arrived with heavy hearts and heavier expectations. The continent was watching not just the leaders but the people, the youth, the diaspora. The agenda was clear: recognize the new reality or risk losing the future. As the session began, Mariam Diarra, the young Senegalese delegate, stood again. "We are at a crossroads," she said firmly. "Either we embrace the courage of leaders like Traoré, who speak for the people and reclaim our dignity, or we continue a path of silence and subservience that leads nowhere." Her words stirred murmurs, but then came the surprise. The Nigerian delegation, once the pillar of ECOWAS's hardline stance, stood up. Their lead spokesperson spoke with a voice unlike before. "We acknowledge the call of our youth, the spirit of our people, and the undeniable influence of Captain Traoré. Nigeria pledges to support a new vision for Africa, one of unity based on respect, sovereignty, and truth." The hall erupted. Back in Abuja, President Tinubu had spent the night in reflection. The storm outside wasn't just political, it was personal. He had lost the trust of a continent, of his own people. In a rare televised address, Tinubu finally spoke. "My silence was mistaken for weakness. I feared the storm, but I see now the storm is the wind of change. Today, I join those who believe Africa must lead Africa, not through fear, but through courage." He called for an emergency meeting with the youth leaders, activists, and opposition. The old guard was shifting. In Burkina Faso, Traoré watched the news unfold with a rare smile. He knew the battle was far from over, but the continent had taken the first true step. The alliance of Sahel states would grow. The African Renaissance Party in Nigeria would build momentum. And the spirit of a new Africa, the Africa of the people, was awakening across every village and city. That night, a young Nigerian boy looked up at the stars and whispered, "Maybe one day we won't need to ask who leads Africa, because we all will."